We pay a lot of money to Anthropic, so our goal is to reduce and ultimately eliminate that cost. That is the head of Microsoft AI talking about a partner his company is still writing checks to. And this week we learned what that sentence means in practice. Microsoft has quietly started swapping the AI inside Excel and Outlook for models it built itself. No announcement, no new logo, your spreadsheet just changed brains. But one number saw this coming months ago. Almost nobody tracks it. It flipped this spring, and the company that lost it is OpenAI, the biggest name in AI. The same number already points at where this happens next. If you use AI at work or hold an index fund, it is quietly your number too. By every number you can see, OpenAI runs this industry. ChatGPT has more than 50 million paying subscribers. It is the most successful consumer AI product on the planet. The name became a verb. When your parents say AI, they mean ChatGPT. And the money is real too. OpenAI pulls in around $2 billion a month, and that figure is still climbing. Whatever is happening here, it is not a company falling apart. So here is the puzzle. Anthropic, the company far fewer households could name, just raised $65 billion in a single round. At a valuation close to $1 trillion, led by some of the biggest investors in the valley. And Microsoft, the company with more inside knowledge than almost anyone, is acting like the rankings already changed. Somebody is reading a different scoreboard, not the one with the download numbers. A quieter one. And on that scoreboard, the famous company is behind. But hold on, because if you go looking for that number, you will find headlines that seem to settle it. Anthropic overtakes OpenAI on revenue. $47 billion a year against 25. Case closed. Except those headlines have a problem. Both numbers are self-reported. These are private companies, no audits, no public filings you can check. And the two figures were not even measured at the same time. Anthropic's $47 billion is from May, OpenAI's $25 billion is from February. That is like judging a race from two photos taken on different days. An independent research group called Epic AI ran the math properly. They fit growth curves to every reliable disclosure from both companies, going back to each one's first billion. What they found is worth pausing on. OpenAI has been growing about 3.5 times a year, which is spectacular, by the standard of any company in history. Anthropic has been growing about 10 times a year. Same industry, same moment, completely different slope. Epic's model says the lines genuinely cross, but probably between August and December of this year, not in May. OpenAI pushed back too. When one dataset showed Anthropic ahead, an OpenAI spokesperson replied, in effect, "Our biggest deals do not show up in your data." So a careful skeptic would say nothing has flipped, the headlines got ahead of the facts. And the skeptic is half right. Which is exactly what makes the real question sharper. Something did change this spring, something you can verify. So what actually flipped? There are two ways to sell intelligence. Two completely different businesses, hiding under the same chatbot label. The first is a membership, $20 a month, like a gym. Show up every day or forget it exists, the price is the price. That is still the core of OpenAI's business. By the best analyst estimates, roughly half its revenue comes from consumer subscriptions. Memberships reward being famous. The second is a meter. You pay for every unit of work the AI actually does, like an electricity bill. That is Anthropic's business. Roughly 3/4 of its revenue, or more, comes from companies paying per unit of work, through the API, through the cloud platforms, through coding agents that bill by the task. Meters reward being useful. And this spring, one number did flip cleanly, in data neither company controls. Ramp processes corporate card spending for more than 50,000 American businesses. In May, Ramp's data showed Anthropic's share of business AI spending passing OpenAI's. 34% against 32%. Not a press release, card transactions. The scoreboard everyone watches counts members. The scoreboard that pays the bills counts the meter. That is the number OpenAI lost. And the meter explains something stranger. It explains why the week Anthropic looked strongest was the same week its biggest customers started building exits. A meter does something a membership never can. It scales with the work. A $20 subscriber caps out at $20. A company that puts an AI agent on real work does not cap out anywhere. An agent that codes all week bills like an employee, not like an app. Anthropic's coding product alone, Claude Code, passed $2.5 billion a year in revenue. It has more than doubled since January. Watch what that does over time. 2 years ago, about a dozen companies paid Anthropic $1 million a year or more. By February, 500 did. By April, more than 1,000. 1,000 companies, each writing seven-figure checks against a running meter. That is how the ramp happened. Anthropic went from $1 billion in annual revenue to $47 billion, by its own reporting, in about 17 months. For scale, Salesforce needed more than 2 decades to reach $30 billion. Nobody grows like that on $20 memberships. You grow like that when your product stops being an app people try and starts being labor companies consume. OpenAI can see this as clearly as anyone, which is why it is racing to become a meter business too. Its enterprise side already makes up more than 40% of revenue by analyst estimates, and it is growing faster than the consumer side. The famous company is not blind, it is just carrying a heavier consumer anchor while it turns the ship. The strangest part of this ramp is who built it. Dario Amodei ran research at OpenAI. He walked away to build the rival, and he has said publicly that he left because he did not trust Sam Altman. While OpenAI built the most famous product in the world, Amodei built the boring one: enterprise contracts, coding tools, meters. Then this June, quietly, his company filed for its IPO 1 week before OpenAI filed for its own. The defector filed first. But before you crown anybody, follow where all this money actually goes. Because the AI economy has a plumbing diagram that would make an accountant squint. Amazon has invested up to $33 billion in Anthropic. In the same deal, Anthropic committed to spend more than $100 billion on Amazon's cloud over the next 10 years. Trace that loop. Amazon puts money in, the money comes back as compute revenue, and Amazon keeps the equity upside as well. The investor is also the utility company. Microsoft and OpenAI run the same shape. $13 billion invested, and a compute partnership reported at around $250 billion. None of this is a scandal, it is how the build-out gets financed, and both sides publish the numbers. The cloud giant gets a guaranteed decade of demand for its chips and data centers. The lab gets the computing power it cannot grow without. Everyone's revenue goes up, partly because everyone is paying everyone else. But it changes how you should read every funding headline. The invoices are not just the scoreboard, they are the circulatory system. A big share of every dollar of AI investment you read about is a promise to pay somebody's meter. So when a valuation sounds impossible, part of the answer is that the money is moving in a circle and every lap around the circle gets counted. Which means the meters are now enormous enough to show up in board meetings at the biggest companies on Earth as a cost somebody is paid to stare at. And when a meter gets that big, something very old and very predictable happens. You would think winning the meter means you have won, that is the summit everyone can see. There is a catch above it. A big invoice does not just make you rich, it paints a target on you. Your biggest customer stares at that invoice every quarter, doing the math on a replacement. That is the sentence Microsoft's AI chief said out loud, the one this video opened with. We pay a lot of money to Anthropic, the goal is to eliminate that cost. And this week the swap began. In-house models called MAI now handle tens of thousands of Excel and Outlook prompts every week. If you were watching the meter, you saw this coming in May. The Bloomberg story only told the public what the invoice already knew. Microsoft claims the new models match frontier performance at a fraction of the cost. Worth knowing, no independent lab has verified those claims yet. Every benchmark so far is Microsoft's own. The strange part is what proves this is strategy, not a breakup. In March, Microsoft licensed Anthropic's Claude for a brand new product. 4 months later, it is routing prompts away from Claude. Platforms do not leave, they hedge. Business strategy has a name for this move: commoditize your complement. If your product depends on someone else's expensive layer, you make that layer cheap, or you make it yourself. Apple paid Intel for chips for 15 years, then built its own silicon and walked. Netflix paid delivery networks until the bills got huge, then built its own. When the electric bill gets big enough, you build the power plant. Anthropic just proved the meter is where the money is, which means every giant paying that meter now has 47 billion reasons to build its own. That is where this happens next. You can even watch this pressure shape the IPO calendar. Anthropic is reportedly moving toward listing as early as this fall, selling the meter story while the meter is hot. OpenAI is reportedly leaning toward waiting until next year. When you are about to ask the public markets to price you, the question of which scoreboard they will use stops being academic. It becomes the whole game. So the next time a headline tells you who is winning AI, run it through 3 questions. Who is actually paying? Is that money a membership or a meter? And the one almost nobody asks, is the biggest payer big enough and motivated enough to build the replacement? Try it on this week's news and it all reads differently. The Microsoft swap stops being a tech story and becomes a bill dispute. The trillion-dollar valuation stops being hype and becomes a bet on a meter that keeps doubling. Even the IPO race becomes 2 companies arguing about which number you should look at. Users made OpenAI famous, and fame is real. Fame fills the feed. It just is not the score. The number that matters was never on the download charts. The invoice is the real scoreboard, and when an invoice gets big enough, the customer starts building the replacement. Somewhere this week, somebody finished a spreadsheet without knowing the intelligence behind it had been quietly swapped for a cheaper one. Nothing broke, nothing was announced, just a line item moving from one meter to another. It was never a mystery, it was procurement. Now you can see it. If you want the next shift in AI decoded before it is obvious in hindsight, subscribe.